Good evening. Welcome to story time. Tonight, we will be reading from Truly Scary Stories for Fearless Kids. We'll be reading The Golden Arm, which is a traditional English fairy tale. There was once a man who traveled the land all over in search of a wife. He saw young and old, rich and poor, pretty and plain, and could not meet with one to his mind. At last he found a woman, young, fair, and rich, who possessed a right arm of solid gold. He married her at once and thought no man so fortunate as he was. They lived happily together, but though he wished people to think otherwise, he was fonder of the golden arm than of all his wife's gifts besides. At last she died. The husband put on the blackest black and pulled the longest face at the funeral, but for all that he got up in the middle of the night, dug out the body, and cut off the golden arm. He hurried home to hide his treasure and thought no one would know. The following night, he put the golden arm under his pillow and was just falling asleep when the ghost of his dead wife glided into the room. Stalking up to the bedside, it drew the curtain and looked at him reproachfully. Pretending not to be afraid, he spoke to the ghost and said, "What hast thou done with thy cheeks so red?" "All withered and wasted away," replied the ghost in a hollow tone. "What hast thou done with thy red rosy lips?" "All withered and wasted away." "What hast thou done with thy golden hair?" "All withered and wasted away." "What hast thou done with thy golden arm?" "Thou hast it." I don't really know how spooky that was, but it was pretty short, so I think I'll read the second one for tonight. This one is called The Backstairs Mountain by Ruth Manning Sanders. Once upon a time, a poor widow and her granddaughter lived in a tiny house on the top of a hill. From the windows of this tiny house, you could see down into a green valley, and across the valley to a great mountain called the Backstairs. Witches lived on the mountain, so every night before they went to bed, the widow and her granddaughter did 4 things. This is what they did first. They loosed the band that worked the spinning wheel and laid it on the wheel seat. Second, they emptied the washing water into a channel. They ran under the house door. Third, they covered the burning turf on the hearth with ashes. Fourth, they took the broom and pushed the handle of it through the bolt sockets of the house door, where the bolt itself had long ago rusted away. And having done all that, they went to bed and slept soundly, knowing that the witches could not get in, because the doing of these things formed a spell to keep the witches out. But one day, the widow and her granddaughter went to market to sell the linen thread they had spun. It was a wild day and a wilder night. Coming home, they took shelter from a storm of rain under some trees, and by the time the rain had eased off a bit, it was night. They missed their way in the dark and didn't get home till very late. When they did get home, they were so weary that their one thought was to get to bed, and they forgot all about the doing of these 4 things that they should have done to keep the witches out. Well, they ate a sup and they drank a sup, and were making to go to their beds, when there came 4 loud bangs on the house door. They were making for the door then to see who was knocking, when a voice screamed out of the night, and it was such an unholy scream that the widow and her granddaughter stood still in the middle of the kitchen and clutched each other in fear. "Where are you, washing water?" screamed the voice, and the washing water answered, I am here in the tub. Where are you, spinning wheel band? Screamed the voice, and the wheel band answered, I am here, fast round the wheel, as if it were spinning. Broom, where are you? Screamed the voice, and the broom answered, I am here, with my handle in the dustpan. Turf coal, where are you? Screamed the voice, and the burning turf answered, I am here, blazing over the ashes. Then bang, 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 at the door again, and a score of hideous voices howled, washing water, wheel band, broom, and turf coal, let us in. The door flew open, and rushed a great company of witches, and in their midst, leaping and yelling, was old Nick himself, with his red horns and his green tail. Pandemonium! Witches all round them, whirling about the kitchen, whooping, bawling, yelling with laughter. The grandmother fell down in a faint, and there was the terrified granddaughter, standing now in the midst of a throng of jeering, ill-favored faces and skinny waving arms, with her poor old grandmother lying like a dead thing at her feet. Old Nick, with the red horns and the green tail, had seated himself on a stool by the fire. He had his hands to his nose, and he was pulling that nose in and out as if it were a trombone, and making the most hideous music with it. The witches began to dance to the music, kicking up their heels, leaping till their heads cracked against the ceiling, upsetting the chairs, the table, the pots and pans, the china, and the crocks. Smash went the widow's best china teapot. Smash, smash went cups and plates. Clitter, clatter, smash, smash. Everything was tumbling off the dresser. The very dresser itself reeled and swayed and toppled sideways against the window, and the window panes fell out with a crash. Oh, what shall I do? What shall I do? Thought the poor terrified granddaughter. Oh, if Granny should die, if this goes on till cockcrow, Granny will die. She will never live to see another day. I must do something, but what can I do? Then an idea came to her. And if a good fairy didn't put that idea into the girl's head, then who did? The music that old Nick was making with his noise became more and more hideous. The dance of the witches became more and more furious. Screaming with laughter, they leaped forth and back over the poor old grandmother, stretched on the floor in her faint. But they were taking no notice of the girl. So, holding her breath and a step at a time, the girl sidled her way towards the house door. The door was still open. The girl slipped through it and out into the night. What did she do then? She screamed with all her might, rushed back into the kitchen, and shouted at the top of her voice, Granny, Granny, come out! The Backstairs Mountain, and the sky above it is all on fire. Instantly the music stopped, and the dancing stopped. Old Nick made one leap through the window. The witches crowded after him, some through the door, some through the window. Out in the night rose a great and terrible cry, as with shrieks and lamentations the witches rose into the air and sped away through the darkness towards their home on the Backstairs Mountain. The shrieks and lamentations dwindled away into the distance, but the granddaughter hadn't wasted one moment in listening to them. Directly the last witch was out of the house, she seized up the broom and clapped the handle of it through the sockets where the door bolt ought to be. Then she dragged the tub of washing water across the kitchen and emptied the water into the channel under the house door. Then she loosed the band of the spinning wheel and laid it on the wheel seat, and last she raked the ashes in the hearth over the burning turf, till not one red ember could be seen. Having done all that, she ran to her granny and brought her to her senses by dashing cold water in her face. The grandmother sat up. Is all quiet at last? She said. Yes, all is quiet, said the girl. But no. From out in the night came a distant, angry roaring, and the roaring grew nearer and nearer and louder, as the witches came whirling back from their home, furious at the trick the girl had played on them. The roar ended in sudden silence. Then, tap, 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 tap. 4 little quiet knocks on the door. "Washing water, let me in," came a wheedling, whispering voice. But the washing water answered, "I can't. I am spilled into the channel under the door. I am trickling away around your feet. My path is down to the valley." "Spinning wheel band, you let me in," came the wheedling voice. But the wheel band answered, "I can't. I am lying loose on the wheel seat." "Broom, let me in," whispered the wheedling voice. "I can't," answered the broom. "I am put here to bolt the door." Turf coal, open to me, open," urged the whispering, wheedling voice. And the hot turf answered, "I can't. My head is smothered with ashes." Then came such a howling and cursing outside the door as made the widow and her granddaughter fall on their knees and cling together. But howl and curse as they might, the witches could not get in. They wheeled away through the night at last, back to their home on the Backstairs Mountain. The widow and her granddaughter had a job of putting their house to rights, but you may be sure after that night never again did they go to their beds until they had loosed the spinning wheel band, emptied the washing water, piled ashes over the hot turf, and pushed the handle of the broom through the bolt sockets on the door. Wasn't that fun? I think we have time for one more. This one is called The King of the Cats by Joseph Jacobs. In which Old Tom, the sexton's big black cat, proves that he understands human speech. The spooky adventure begins when the sexton returns home one night with a curious tale about 9 black cats and a small black coffin marked with a gold coronet, which he has seen in the graveyard that very evening. Most curious was the message he was supposed to deliver. Who was Tom Tildrum? One winter's evening, the sexton's wife was sitting by the fireside with her big black cat, Old Tom. On the other side, both half asleep and waiting for the master to come home. They waited and they waited, but still he didn't come, till last he came rushing in, calling out, "Who's Tommy Tildrum?" in such a wild way that both his wife and his cat stared at him to know what was the matter. "Why, what's the matter?" said his wife, "and why do you want to know who Tommy Tildrum is?" "Oh, I've had such an adventure." "I was digging away at old Mr. Fordyce's grave, when I suppose I must have dropped asleep, and only woke up by hearing cats mew, meow, meow," said Old Tom in answer. "Yes, just like that. So I looked over the edge of the grave, and what do you think I saw?" "Now, how can I tell?" said the sexton's wife. "Why, 9 black cats, all like our friend Tom here, all with a white spot on their chests. What do you think they were carrying? Why, a small coffin covered with a black velvet pall, and on the pall was a small coronet all of gold, and at every third step they took they cried all together, 'Meow! Meow!'" said Old Tom again. "Yes, just like that," said the sexton. And as they came nearer and nearer to me, I could see them more distinctly, because their eyes shone out with a sort of green light. Well, they all came toward me, 8 of them carrying the coffin, and the biggest cat of them of all, walking in front for all the world like. But look at our Tom, how he's looking at me. You'd think he knew all I was saying." Go on," said his wife. "Never mind, Old Tom." "Well, as I was a-saying, they came toward me slowly and solemnly, and at every third step crying all together, 'Meow! Meow!'" said Old Tom again. "Yes, just like that. until they came and stood right opposite Mr. Fordyce's grave, where I was. When they all stood still and looked straight at me, I did feel queer, that I did. But look at old Tom. He's looking at me just like they did. Go on, said his wife. Never mind old Tom. Where was I? Oh, they all stood still looking at me, when the one that wasn't carrying the coffin came forward and staring straight at me, said to me, yes, I tell thee, said to me, with a squeaky voice, tell Tom Tildrum that Tim Toldrum's dead. And that's why I asked you if you knew who Tom Tildrum was. For how can I tell Tim Tildrum's dead, if I don't know who Tom Tildrum is? Look at old Tom, screamed his wife. And well he might look, for Tom was swelling, and Tom was staring, and at last Tom shrieked out, what? Old Tim dead? Then I'm the king of the cats, and rushed up the chimney and was never more seen. What a crazy story. Okay. And that was story time for tonight. 3 stories for the price of 1. It's pretty good. I have a little visitor here. Come on. I don't know if you can see him. You probably heard him.